getting the Winter Olympics for the 2034 games. Well, maybe you've been living under a rock, or maybe you are new to my channel, but Salt Lake City has just been named. I mean, they've been kind of going back and forth about this for about a month now, but they've been named the preferred city to host the 2034 Olympics. Now, you guys, this is huge news for Utahns, for Park City, for the state of Utah. So, a huge day for Utah. The IOC names Salt Lake City the preferred host of the 2034 Olympics. Salt Lake City, Fraser Bullock has an inkling about Salt Lake City's future Winter Olympics odds before the International Olympic Committee Executive Board met Wednesday to announce the potential host for the 2030 and 2034 Games. Bullock, president and CEO of the Salt Lake City, Utah Committee for the Games, had been on the phone with IOC officials earlier in the day, and they had essentially assured him hours before any formal announcement that Park City would be that Salt Lake, that Salt Lake would be selected as the favorite for the 2034. Still, he said, it was a magical moment to hear Utah's capital city read out loud. So, while this doesn't guarantee our spot as that we're getting it, I mean, basically everybody is like, we're getting the Olympics, we're getting the Olympics. It's not set in stone, but it's looking highly likely that in 2034, which is going to be 10 years from now, that Utah is going to be getting the Olympics again. Now, why do I think this is important? Well, if you remember, we actually hosted the 2002 Winter Olympics. Now, what happened after Park City and Utah got that Winter Olympic Games? Now, the games happen they're spread all over the state. They go to Soldier Hollow, which is in Midway. They go to Snow Basin, which is up in Ogden. There's a lot of stuff that happens in Salt Lake. And then there's also a lot of places in Park City that have Winter Olympic venues. So they're the Winter Olympics is kind of spread out all over Utah, but it's mostly Salt Lake, Park City, Ogden. What happened after we got the 2002 Winter Olympics? People came here and they said, wow, this little tiny town of Park City is pretty amazing and pretty rad. I think we're going to move there. So Park City had a little bit of a population boom, and we started to get more people moving here. Now, fast forward, we're really popular because people are like, wow, there's an international airport only 30 minutes away from a major ski destination. And there's this amazing little main street, not to mention what's happening over at Deer Valley with the new expansion and the Mayflower and all the new development, by the way, that is going to be happening around the Jordanelle. If you don't know what's happening over there, then you need to go watch my video called The Future of Park City. It's basically titled, I think it's like what's happening at the Jordanelle. I'll link to it at the end of this video. You should go check it out because there are major things happening over there. And we're only going to get more popular. We're only going to bring more people to the state. And there's a lot of people who probably don't want to hear that. And they're like, oh my God, please don't be bringing people to Utah anymore. Stop telling people to move here. I get it. I've lived in Park City for 37 years. I have seen enormous change, right? When my parents moved here, when my dad moved here way back in the day, like the Canyons was called Park West. Like Main Street was like a two-way road. Like there were like bar fights and brawls and people threw chairs out the windows. Like it was sort of like the wild, wild west, right? They bought their plot of land in Park City for $14,000 like 40 years ago. That house is now worth well over $1 million here. So it just is it's kind of crazy what's happened here. So if we get the Olympics, this is going to make Utah explode. It's going to make our population explode. We are already short housing here. We are short about 60,000 units. Developers, builders can't seem to build fast enough. They're short on houses because land is really, really expensive. So they can't buy the land because they won't hit their margins. So basically when they're buying the land, they need to buy the land for really, really cheap in order to hit their margins, which they just can't simply do. Park City is also scarce, very scarce. It's scarce real estate. We can't build anymore. People are coming here. They're buying houses that are 20 to 30 years old. People that have lots of money are completely tearing those homes down, cratering them, as what you would say in Jackson, because it's happening in Jackson too, and having to rebuild a brand new home from scratch they just paid $2.5 million for. So, what is going to happen in 10 years, my friends? Well, I just want you to be thinking about, if the Olympics comes to Utah, and this being already one of the safest places to park your money, your appreciation is only going to continue to get better, and especially with what's happening with Deer Valley, because Deer Valley's the best ski resort in the world. So, he and Salt Lake City Mayor Aaron Wendenhall raised their arms towards Wednesday's hazy blue sky as the International Olympic Committee announced Salt Lake City as the preferred host for the 2034 Winter Olympics and Paralympics. Other members of the committee embraced as the crowd of more than 100 cheered in celebration. The measure doesn't ensure that Utah's capital will host the games in 2034, but it puts the city on track to host a major global event. In short, the city's bid took a major leap forward. So I'm just happy for the people of Utah that we can finally have a moment after a decade of work. He said he's been supporting Salt Lake City, Utah 2034 cap. He's been sporting a Salt Lake City, Utah 2034 cap, like a baseball cap. Now we have these next 10 years to bask in the limelight a little bit and make sure that our preparations are just off the charts and people can have the greatest experience possible. The IOC officials also named the French Alps, France, as the preferred host of the 2030 Winter Olympics during its meeting in Paris on Wednesday. In a bit of a surprise, the committee also said it would begin privileged dialogue with Switzerland, giving the country a head start on possibly hosting the 2038 event. The organization expected to formally name hosts of the 2030 and 2034 Winter Olympics next year after voting in October to award the two events at the same time. The 2026 Winter Olympic Games will be held in Italy. So, why did Salt Lake get the nod? Salt Lake City was one of 4 applicants vying for the games in 2030 and 2034, but it had a leg up on its proposal. The Salt Lake City, Utah committee had made it clear to the IOC it preferred to host the event in 2034, but we could also host it in 2030 if needed. This made Salt Lake the only candidate for the 2034 Winter Olympics. However, Salt Lake City's history also seemed to be a major advantage. Salt Lake City has only hosted the Winter Olympics once in 2002. I was in high school. I think I was a freshman in high school, and I remember going to the half pipe competition that was at Park City, and I watched Shaun White compete and Kelly Clarkson. And it was successful enough that members of the IOC Futures Host Commission recognized it Wednesday. Carl Stoss, the commission's head, explained the IOC was impressed by Salt Lake City, Utah's committee, very compact and master plan, and how the city could host the event with no significant capital investment required because we've done it before. That's largely because the state created a fund after the 2002 Winter Olympics to help preserve and maintain many of these venues. He added the region is also experienced in hosting global winter sports events, and the bid has an exceptional public support as well as support from federal and state local government. Utah officials found more than 80% of Utahns are supportive of hosting another Winter Olympics. There are 2 key factors as to why the OC picked Salt Lake City. First, all of the competition venues are within an hour of the planned Olympic Village, which it says can make for a unique opportunity and exceptional athlete experience. If you did not know this about me, I actually danced in the opening ceremonies of the 2002 Winter Olympics. Crazy, right? Second, it believes Salt Lake City's bid provides an opportunity to secure a traditional winter sports and climate relatable destination well in advance of the games based on the IOC Commission studies on the matter. In all, Stoss said the IOC determined the bid could build on the legacies of 2002. None of this was surprising to members of the Salt Lake City, Utah committee, which offered its final pitch to the IOC the last week before the organization chose its preferred sites. All of the public and government support was unmatched by others in the field, Mendenhall said. The same goes for the ability to host the event with minimal capital investment. I don't think they can say that anywhere else in the world. Utah Governor Spencer Cox said he and the committee members believed 2002 would be a key to all of this as they pushed to host the Winter Olympics for a second time. In fact, he said many of the IOC officials they spoke to attend the 2002 Winter Games and left with a positive feeling. We know that we can do this now. There is no question, he said. That is what the IOC confirmed in every conversation that we had. All of that added up to now, and we get to make the next best games ever. So in 2034 is 10 years from now. I'm going to be 47 years old. I am going to be old. Oh my gosh. What happens next? The process isn't over yet. Wednesday's announcement initiates a process between the IOC in France and also the Salt Lake City, Utah Committee for the Games, where the sides will negotiate back and forth until a final agreement is locked in place for 2030 and 2034. Both preferred hosts have their homework cut out for them over the next few months. Stoss said the preferred future hosts have until the end of February to admit final proposals and the end of March for all guarantees. The IOC will also visit the future host cities in April as it looks to make its final decision. If the right conditions aren't met, the process may move forward with another preferred host. The work is not finished, Stoss said. We have another 6 months to come to a decision. The future host will now set a timeline for the targeted dialogues and report back to the executive board on the outcome of these discussions ahead of the next IOC in July. Bullock isn't deferred by this timeline. He said the committee could set the send button tomorrow on documents the IO needs. Cox added he believes Utah is ready to host the Winter Olympic Games next year if it had to, based on how this Olympic ready state is ready right now. The committee instead plans to focus a little more on celebrating this week before they're moving forward with progress. Mendenhall said there would be some additional celebrations Wednesday, so they've already been kind of celebrating this. The committee's government and strategic boards will also meet at the Rice-Eccles Stadium on Friday, and they will lead a public celebration. So this has actually already happened. This was about a month ago that I've known about this, but I wanted to do an update for some of you people that don't live in Utah, don't know what's about to happen. And for those of you who are still thinking about buying or selling real estate here, this is a big deal for Utah.